Well, I think the question you have to ask with Andrew Berry is if the season continues the way it is and they end up with the number one or number two pick, do you want Andrew Berry picking the quarterback for the Browns in the draft? And if the answer is no, then you have to move on. If the
Yeah.
answer is yes, then obviously you keep him. So that is the ultimate question that you have to ask yourself as the owner of this team is if you end up in that position, do you want Andrew Berry making that pick? So we'll see how that all plays out. And it's tough because we've seen them like make moves. You know, they made the trade down this last NFL draft to pick up an extra first this year. We've seen some in-season moves as well in terms of trading Joe Flacco, trading Greg Newsome as well. And I feel like they're probably not done trading guys with where this team is right now. And, you know, trading some of these players can ultimately be, a white flag because the trade deadline is in a few weeks. It's that first week in November, right? I remember correctly.
Yeah, November 5th.
Okay. Yeah. So it's like 3 weeks away from tomorrow,
I
Wednesday,
think,
3 weeks away
yeah.
from Wednesday. So, you have the trade deadline in a few weeks. You have Miami this Sunday, then you have the bye week. If changes take place, typically you would like to get to the bye week to make said changes. So, with where they are now, do you foresee them making any more moves than what they've already made? And as well as like talk about, the trade of Joe Flacco, the trade of Greg Newsome too.
Yeah, well, let's go back to what happened last week because obviously we never touched on it. The Browns trading Joe Flacco to the Cincinnati Bengals. I think we kind of expected Flacco could be moved to a team needing a quarterback. I don't think any of us expected it to be the in division rival. They finally completed a trade. No fax issues finally this time, but it was not surprising. I think we all kind of expected if Flacco got benched, he was not going to be around. Um, Seems to be like if you read the tea leaves and you read what Stefanski said in the press conference after the trade, there might be a power struggle going on in that building because he said he was surprised. I thought it was just saying like surprised that it all happened so quickly, but I think it happened quickly because Barry went and made a move, and obviously when you get a fifth round pick for Joe Flacco, um, obviously like that deal was too good to pass up. Like it's unfortunate that Joe's not here. 2023 will always live in our memories because it was a fun time, but his leash was obviously short. The turnovers were an issue. So now he goes to Cincinnati, played okay, uh, had them in a spot to potentially steal one from Green Bay, but the defense had their issues. And then the Greg Newsome trade, I think, was completely shocking. Sending him to Jacksonville for Tyson Campbell. Campbell, I think, fits more of what the Browns do defensively in terms of coverage. And I think with Greg Newsome, like obviously he was somewhat of a fan favorite. People got tired of the dancing around after making plays or not even being part of making plays, but that was just Greg's personality. But I think, and it sounded like, according to reports, extension talks weren't a were happening, but it seems like maybe the price range was too much for the Browns. Maybe Greg was and his representation was asking for too much. So I think it's a good deal for both sides. I thought Tyson Campbell played okay against Pittsburgh. Obviously, he did give up the touchdown, but going up against DK Metcalf, that's always a battle. But he'll be here for the next couple of years. We definitely needed another number two corner to go opposite Denzel. But I also think because of the way the contract is structured and the fact that Jacksonville's paid most of the guaranteed money already, this shouldn't put the Browns in a position to pass up on a corner they potentially like in the next draft because I think after the 26th season they can get out of Campbell's deal. But he's a talented corner. It was a new regime in Jacksonville, so clearly they didn't feel the same way about him as the previous regime. Didn't fit what they were running down there defensively now under Liam Cohen. So It was a good move for both sides, and we'll see how that trade ultimately pays off. Um, what was your thoughts on the trade, Anthony?
Yeah, I thought that what they were able to do in terms of getting a guy who's under control for the next handful of seasons, it would kind of stabilize where this room is based on where they are currently. You know, you did have Newsome, whose contract was expiring after this year. Martin Emerson, who got hurt early in training camp, his contract is expiring after this season. That really leaves you with Denzel Ward and a handful of later round draft picks and undrafted free agent guys who potentially going into next season. So this gives you Denzel Ward and Tyson Campbell under contract for the next handful of seasons and allows you to buy some times in terms of building that room back up again. And with what they need offensively, this will help out in the draft too. Like you don't have to look at a cornerback in the first round unless they find somebody who they really really like at a spot there, and probably with that second draft pick, because I would imagine the top one will probably be a quarterback or offensive tackle, based on what we see right now. So this gives you the flexibility in terms of, okay, this is one position we don't have to address right now, but if there's a guy there that we really like in the moment, based on our board, you take a corner, if it's in the first round too, like you get that fifth year option, which is extremely important. You kind of want that option in terms of quarterback, uh, offensive tackle, edge player, receiver. Like
Wide receiver. Yep.
you want that in those kind of key positions. So that I wouldn't rule it out with that second first round pick, but it definitely gives you the flexibility with having both Denzel Ward and Tyson Campbell locked up for a handful of seasons that you don't have to do it in the moment. So I thought it was a good move. The salary is fine, especially the fact that they can get out of it if the play isn't there. I do like the fact that he is a bigger corner. He's 6'1", 6'2". Like out there yesterday, he looked as big as DK Metcalf trying to cover him, which I like when you're able to have a corner like that, especially for some of the receivers in this league. And look, if he's here to do a number on DK over the next few years while DK is in Pittsburgh as well, you play them twice a year, that's great. And then, you have a big physical guy, you have a more speed corner in Denzel Ward who's able to cover just about anybody. And obviously his speed will come down because he's getting older as well. But, you know, I like the pairing now that they have with the two guys.
Yeah, without a doubt. And I thought like Campbell, like I kind of forgot, like he did clunk like mid 4.4s at the combine, but there was unofficial pro day times of 4.3, and it showed yesterday because he was able to keep up with DK Metcalf, who's one of the faster receivers in the league. Like, not only does he have the size, but he has the speed to where he can go up against some of the bigger and faster corner or wide receivers in the league, which is a good weapon to have when you already have Denzel Ward, to have the match that up size and speed wise when you're going up against the likes of Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, DeAndre Hopkins when we play Baltimore again later this season, and like we mentioned, DK Metcalf as well.
Yeah, it's definitely good to see, have that acquisition. And, we like Greg, despite the dancing at times, but I felt like, he had a few good moments here. The pick six against Baltimore to lead that comeback a couple years ago is probably his career highlight here. But
Without a doubt,
we definitely wish him the best down there in Jacksonville. Maybe that's a place where he could be long term. If not, he'll obviously hit the free agent market this offseason. We'll see where he ends up.
didn't have a good start yesterday. Got toasted by
I
Jackson
did.
Smith and Ajigba.
Well, that's not an easy task either.
No, it's not. I mean,
But
it's
you know, it. He's been doing that to a lot of people so far this season and early on in his career.
without a doubt.
These wide receivers from Ohio State, man, they just seem to be ruling this league so far. And you got a couple Carnell
Carnell
Tate
Tate, come
coming,
on down next year.
Jeremiah Smith coming. So the pipeline is definitely continuing with these Ohio State wide receivers.
Yeah.
So
Let's get back to the Schefter article real quick because
yeah,
you did mention it, but we got on a tangent about the trades that have already happened.
that's fine. So Adam Schefter did release an article talking about how this trade deadline could be one of the more memorable ones in recent years, and he listed a handful of Browns players on the that could be moved at the trade deadline, and they included Joel Bitonio, Wyatt Teller, Shelby Harris, David Njoku. Do you feel that the Browns are done making moves, or does this game this Sunday kind of dictate if you decide to start to move on from some of these guys who are pretty much on expiring contracts?
Yeah, all these guys, and Ethan Posick was mentioned as well. So the whole interior of the offensive line, but yeah, they're all on expiring contracts, which I think is probably the main crux of why Schefter threw them all in there. Um, do I think this game could decide it? Yes and no, because I feel like we've already seen it. Barry's made 3 trades during the season, trading Joe Flacco away, trading Greg Newsome away, and acquiring Cam Robinson. So he's willing to wheel and deal. And I think Jerome Ford should have been thrown in this as well. I know there's quite the number of running backs Schefter mentioned in the article, but I feel like Jerome Ford is another name to watch, especially with teams like the Chargers looking for running backs because of the injuries that have happened across the league. When I look at those guys, I'm taking Joel Bitonio off because I feel like he probably does not want to be moved at this point. I feel like he is kind of in that Joe Thomas realm, wants to stay with the Browns through the rest of his career, came back this year to be part of this organization. I think he's a Brown for life. I feel like he'll retire a Cleveland Brown probably after this season. Wyatt Teller, David Njoku, Shelby Harris. I think those are the 3 most likely Cleveland Browns to be moved by the deadline. If I had to put at it, I would say Harris is the front runner because I feel like once Michael Hall is back and ready to play, like Harris's role gets diminished even more. So I feel like he gets moved to a contender. And then it's what is Njoku and Teller's market? Is there a team that wants another weapon offensively to put them over the top? Do they make the call to the Browns? What's the asking price? What does Andrew Berry want in return for Njoku? And the same goes for Teller. If a team needs an offensive lineman, I know Tampa had some injuries earlier in the year that could make sense, especially with his relationship with Baker Mayfield. But it all comes down to price. And I think Mary Kay mentioned the Browns have had extension talks with Njoku. Like, how does that ultimately sway? Does what they could potentially get in compensatory picks, which they may not ultimately even get one based on their free agent activity. But if they get a good offer, if they get like a 4th for either one of those guys, do they pull the trigger and collect even more draft assets? Because, like, as we know, Anthony, I wouldn't even call it a full rebuild. This is a retooling. And what do teams that retool need? Draft picks, affordable rookie contracts. That's what the Browns need, obviously, still at this point, because they have massive cap hits coming with Miles, Denzel, and of course, Deshaun Watson, who's still going to be here next year. They need to get affordable rookie talent on this team. And that's where, unfortunately, sacrifices have to be made at this point. And guys like Batoni or guys like Teller and Njoku might have to be those sacrifices, even though they've been the core pieces during the last 5 years. They're both getting older. Both could command money that the Browns might not be able to commit. Might be time to make those moves and collect more draft assets. So if they're sitting at 1-6 or even 1-7 after the New England game in a couple of weeks after the bye, they might be in seller mode, and those could be 2 attractive pieces for other teams around the league.
So as of right now, they currently have their own picks, rounds 1 through 5. An additional first round pick from Jacksonville, 2 additional fifth round picks from the Raiders and Bengals, 2 additional 7th round picks from the Jaguars and Seahawks. So they have 10 selections currently right now in the 2026 NFL draft. Would you want even more picks and bring in more than 10 rookies, or are you looking to potentially making more pick swaps where maybe you could turn a couple of those fifth rounders into third rounders or fourth rounders to try and pick higher up in the draft.
I could see that. Like if it's, let's just say like Njoku in one of those fifths to get a fourth, or Njoku and yeah, or maybe Njoku in a fifth to get a third, or Teller in a fifth to get a third. Like I would try to get, like, I love getting top 100 picks. I feel like that's where you want to be. Even if it's top 150 or top 125, I feel like you're in a good spot to get players the way the Browns were this year. Because they wheeled and dealed, and obviously they were done by pick 144, and they came away with a good draft class based on the early return. So if they can do like the pick swap thing to where they can move up higher in the draft and have, 6 or 7 top 125 picks or something like that, I feel like that would be good. Set us up in a good position to, add some talent, affordable talent, to keep building on what this 2025 draft class has been, and continue to build by hopefully selecting some guys at key core positions like offensive tackle, receiver, corner, and maybe even a quarterback at one point as well.
Yeah, they need some, I think, higher draft capital, especially if they have to trade up maybe a spot or two for a quarterback based on where they finish this season, or even further. You want to have those higher picks if quarterback's the route that they want to go this offseason. But I think with where they are pick wise, they have a good amount. I think being able to make some swaps here with some of these selections to get higher up would be ideal at this trade deadline if you're able to do. Like if you're able to trade like Shelby Harris and a seventh for like a fifth round pick or a sixth round pick, like that's something I think that, and I would think he might be able to get a little bit more, but I think a fifth might be about the most you would get for Shelby at this point. Njoku, maybe you can get a third. Same with Teller, probably a fourth or fifth, just based on his play and the contract at this point. But I would do my best to make a couple more moves here if that's the route that they decide to go in. If we lose on Sunday and there's a coaching change and among other things, like all right, let's start to make some of these moves here. Otherwise, you see what you have and keep moving forward. But they do still
Without a
have
doubt.
3 weeks to the trade deadline. So this was going to be the wrap of our podcast, and then during the middle of while recording,